I had been feeling uneasy for weeks, a strange emptiness creeping over me whenever I looked at my wife. We were married for 5 years, and though life had its UPS and downs, I always believed our bond was strong. But a thought began gnawing at me. Would she stay if I weren't at my best? The question haunted me until I made a rash decision. I decided to tell her I was seriously sick, hoping it would test her loyalty. Deep down, I wanted reassurance, proof that she loved me enough to stay the night. I told her I felt my chest tighten with anxiety. I think I might be sick, I said quietly over dinner. Avoiding her eyes, I could feel my heart pounding, each beat echoing like a warning. She looked up from her plate, concern instantly flooding her features. "What do you mean, what's wrong?" she asked, reaching across the table to take my hand. Her touch was warm, grounding me in a reality I was trying to manipulate. I swallowed hard. I don't know yet. The doctor says it could be serious, but they're running tests. Her eyes filled with worry. She squeezed my hand tightly. "We'll get through this together." "Don't worry," she whispered, her voice soft but resolute. Relief washed over me. This was what I wanted. Her care, her concern, her love, but even as I felt that fleeting relief, a shadow of guilt crept in. What if I'd gone too far? What if she sensed the lie even faintly? I pushed the thoughts aside, convincing myself it was for the greater good. The next few days were filled with doctor visits and quiet moments. At home, I watched her, noting every gesture, every glance. She stayed by my side, brought me soup, and asked about my comfort. Yet I couldn't help noticing subtle changes. Her smiles lingered a little too long when she spoke to the doctor. She laughed a bit more freely in the sterile, white hallways than she did at home. I tried to dismiss it as normal, perhaps just relief at my improving condition, but a tiny seed of doubt was planted. One evening, I lay on the couch pretending to rest. While she spoke to the doctor about my latest test results, the sound of their laughter made my stomach twist. I told myself it was harmless, just casual conversation. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. My wife, the woman I had married out of love, now seemed distant and subtle. Unsettling ways I realized that this experiment I had started might not be revealing loyalty. It might be revealing truths I wasn't ready to face. By the end of the week, I was exhausted. Not from sickness, but from the tension that filled our home. I wanted to trust her, wanted to believe she was still the same person, who had promised to stand by me in sickness and in health. But the doubts were growing, whispering in my mind, warning me that my little test could spiral out of control. In deep down, I knew that once this line had been crossed, there was no going back. The following week was unbearable. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen at the clinic. The way my wife's laughter lingered in the air, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke to the doctor. At first, I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was just friendliness, just a normal connection between patient and doctor. But the more I watched, the more uneasy I felt. Every visit felt like a test I was failing, and the lie I had created to test her loyalty was slowly suffocating me. One afternoon, curiosity and fear collided, and I decided to walk into the clinic earlier than usual, hoping to catch a glimpse of her before the appointment. My heart pounded in my chest as I opened the door, and what I saw made me freeze in place. They were standing close together, too close, sharing a private joke that made them both laugh uncontrollably. Her hand brushed his arm, a gesture so casual yet intimate. It sent a cold chill through me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to believe I was imagining it, that it was some innocent interaction, but the truth was glaringly obvious. I backed away slowly, my mind spinning. The plan I had set in motion to see if she would stay was crumbling around me. This sickness experiment, which I thought would reveal love, was revealing betrayal. I couldn't stop replaying that moment in my head. The way she looked at him, the way he responded to her smiles. Every tiny detail haunted me that night at home. I tried to speak to her, to ask about the visit casually, but she was cheerful, seemingly unaware of my inner turmoil. Her ease made my stomach churn. I realized I was no longer observing a test. I was witnessing a shift, a drift in her attention and affection. Days passed, each one heavier than the last. I found myself monitoring her phone, her messages, her social media interactions. I hated myself for it, yet I couldn't resist. Every laugh, every smile she sent through the screen felt like a confirmation of my worst fears. Even at dinner, her mind seemed elsewhere, distracted by conversations I wasn't part of. I tried to remind myself that I had created this situation, that my lie had set these events into motion. Still, the pain of watching her slowly move away from me was unbearable. At the same time, my trust in the doctor began to crumble. Someone I had trusted implicitly now felt like a rival every time I saw him in the clinic. I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he let on. My wife's loyalty was no longer the question. I had crossed a line I could never uncross, and now the consequences of my deceit were glaringly clear. My sickness, which I had imagined as a harmless experiment, had become a ticking time bomb. By the end of the week, I realized that I could no longer pretend. I needed to confront the reality I had created, but fear, guilt, and heartbreak held me back. The line between love and betrayal had blurred, and I understood that whatever happened next, nothing would be the same again. The tension at home had reached a breaking point. I tried to act normal, to carry on with my life as if nothing had changed. But every glance, every word between my wife and me felt forced hollow. The laughter she once shared freely with me was now replaced by quiet moments and distracted smiles. My mind raced constantly, imagining the worst, replaying the scene at the clinic over and over. I could no longer tell whether my sickness had ever mattered to her, or if it had just been a stepping stone for something else. I began noticing other subtle signs. Her phone buzzed more often, and she quickly hid messages whenever I entered the room. Conversations grew shorter. Dinners became rushed, and she no longer lingered after small talk. I tried to reason with myself. Perhaps she was simply stressed. Perhaps my own obsession was making me paranoid. But deep down, I knew it wasn't paranoia. There was a shift in her behavior that couldn't be explained away by normal life stress. One evening, I mustered the courage to confront her gently. "Are you feeling distant from me?" I asked, my voice trembling. Despite my efforts to stay calm, she looked at me with surprise, almost hurt, and reassured me that everything was fine. But the flicker in her eyes, the hesitation before she spoke, told a different story that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, haunted by the possibility that my carefully planned test had backfired completely. Instead of proving love, I had pushed her away, maybe irreversibly. Meanwhile, the doctor loomed large in my thoughts. I trusted him, respected him, but now he felt like an intruder in the life I had built. Every time I imagined them together, a sick knot of jealousy and betrayal tightened in my chest. I realized that my plan, my little experiment, had spiraled out of control. It wasn't just my relationship on the line anymore. It was my sense of trust, my sense of reality itself. My sickness, meant to test devotion, had become a weapon I had unwittingly turned against myself. I tried to distract myself with work, hobbies, anything to take my mind off the growing distance between us. But no distraction worked. I found myself retracing every interaction, every smile, every lingering glance, the doubt gnawed at me constantly, and anger slowly replaced my sadness. I wanted answers, explanations. Anything to restore the bond I feared was slipping through my fingers. Finally, I knew I could no longer avoid the inevitable confrontation. I needed to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I couldn't keep pretending that my lie had been harmless. The situation had escalated beyond control, and the people I loved most were now caught in the crossfire of my own mistakes. That night, as I watched her fall asleep beside me, unaware of the storm brewing in my heart, I realized something harsh but undeniable. The sickness test I had created had turned into a trap I had walked into willingly, and now there was no turning back. The following morning, I couldn't bear another day of uncertainty. I had to confront them both. The person I loved and the person I had trusted most. My hands trembled as I called the doctor's office and requested an urgent meeting. At the same time, I steeled myself for a conversation with my wife, preparing to face whatever truth awaited me. Every step felt heavy, as if the floor beneath me could collapse under the weight of my fears. I knew that once this confrontation began, nothing could go back to the way it had been. When I arrived at the clinic, I found her there first, waiting with that same gentle smile I had once loved. The doctor greeted me warmly, oblivious or perhaps intentionally blind to the tension in my posture. I took a deep breath and addressed them both, my voice shaking but firm. "I know something is going on between you two," I said, my words tasting bitter and final. "I need the truth." Silence fell. Heavy and suffocating, my wife's eyes met mine, full of shame and guilt, while the doctor's gaze flickered nervously. She took a step forward, her voice soft. It started when you told me you were sick. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I felt alone, scared, and he was there. Her words struck me like a punch to the gut. I realized then that my attempt to test her had been the catalyst for this betrayal. My sickness had been meant to reveal love, but it had exposed a fracture I had never anticipated. The doctor nodded slightly, confirming what I already feared. The reality hit me fully. They had begun seeing each other, drawn together in a way I had never imagined. My heart twisted with anger, pain, and an overwhelming sense of regret. I understood that my actions, however innocent in my mind, had set the stage for this heartbreak. I had created a test for loyalty, and in doing so had pushed the person I loved into someone else's arms. I turned away, swallowing the lump in my throat. Tears threatened to fall, but I fought them back. There was nothing left to say that could undo what had happened. I packed my things later that day, leaving the home we had shared for 5 years. Each step out the door felt like a final severing of ties, not just with her, but with the illusion of control I had once believed I held. Watching her walk toward him, laughter spilling from their conversation, I understood the bitter truth. Love cannot be forced, manipulated, or tested artificially. Alone, I wandered through the empty house, memories of happier times echoing in every room. The sickness that had begun as a lie to prove devotion had become a mirror reflecting the harsh reality of human frailty, temptation, and the consequences of deceit. I realized that no test of loyalty could replace honesty, trust, and communication. My heart ached, but I vowed to rebuild my life on a foundation I had ignored for too long. Love, I learned the hard way, is not something you can demand. It is something earned, nurtured, and most importantly, respected. By nightfall, I sat alone, the silence heavy but strangely liberating. The pain of betrayal was sharp, but clarity had emerged from it. I had survived the consequences of my own actions. And though the wound was deep, I knew that one day, with honesty and self-reflection, I could find peace and perhaps a love that did not require tests or manipulation to survive.